Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today, originally from Romania and then by way of Germany and now in Los Angeles, California, Mircea Gogoncea is with us, who is the head of guitar. That's his official title, but he's a professional guitarist. He's with the company Tonebase, which is an LA-based firm that... How will I put this? Well, let me put it this way.
So we do... Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so they have a firm belief... I like this when I read your guys' bio. You have a firm belief that knowledge is meant to be shared. I love that. The passing down of information from one generation to the next is the only way a culture can continue to develop and grow. Nowhere is this more true than in music. Without a great teacher, students at every skill level cannot progress sufficiently. That is why it's crucial. Let's try that again. That is why it's crucial for all students to have access to the best instructors possible through every stage of their musical development. Mircea, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited about talking about you and your company, Tonebase, that you represent, especially when I started looking at the notes in my pre-production meeting, the talking points that you sent me, and I thought, okay, this is going to be an interesting conversation here, especially when we talk about what your company is doing in really transcending not only the education, but the opportunity for young people to learn their instruments and become craftsmen at it. But before we do that, let's introduce yourself a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about you. You're originally from Romania and you lived in Germany, now you're in Los Angeles. How did you get into music?
Well, I actually started playing music when I was 4 years old, which is unusual because nobody in my family is a professional musician. But, I was born at a very pivotal time in history. As you know, possibly, Romania was under a horrible dictatorship that lasted until 1989. And the dictator was killed shortly before I was born. So I was part of the first free generation, so to say, the youngest, the first kids that have never experienced the oppression that our parents have known. So when I was growing up, my family was really adamant about using this to its full potential, this moment in history. And so my parents were teachers and they got me basically private instruction in every field you can possibly imagine. And because they were pretty, how should I put this? They were not well off. They would actually exchange their own teaching services in exchange for me getting lessons with their colleagues. And so I did, in addition to music, I did computer science and painting and literature and foreign languages. And I had a private teacher for everything that my mom and dad were just working really, really hard to tutor other kids in exchange of. And so music was the one that I chose out of the million things that I was doing as a child. And it's interesting because having none of my parents be involved in this meant that I pretty much had to find my way very early on. And, I was lucky to have a very supportive family in my decision to pursue music. But it's also true that, I didn't get the same amount of knowledge passed down to me immediately from my family as others might who, come from a musical background, so to say.
Your musical influences, when you talk about Romania, especially growing up either during or just after the dictatorship, was there a musical scene in Romania as a child? Do you remember that? And if so, what style of music, and was there anyone in particular that influenced you?
I mean, yes, of course. The music scene has been and still is very vibrant. I would say that as a child, I was exposed mostly to the official music education in the schools that I was in, and that was almost exclusively classical music. And that is also the case in the United States. There is this wide discrepancy between what is taught in schools, which is overwhelmingly classical and classical inspired music, and what the population at large listens to, which of which classical music is a very small sliver. So in Romania, this was exactly the same. I was taught exclusively classical music as a child. All the other popular music styles that I learned and did were my own hobbies, and they were even seen occasionally as acts of rebellion by some of the people around me. Not that I cared very much what they thought. But yes, so my education in Romania was exclusively in classical music, and the country itself has a very long tradition in classical music. It's definitely not something new there. As a part of the larger sort of European cultural context, classical music is sort of the art music of these countries over the past couple of centuries.
When we talk about classical music, and I'm one of those guys that will listen to almost just about everything, and classical music is included in that. Its role in the contemporary music scene, is that something that you see helping develop today's music? Is that classical musical background, especially when you talk about the school system? Here in the United States, especially in the junior high, the middle school, and the high schools, there is, typically, or there's a music program, and part of that is classical music. Does that transcend into the contemporary music scene that you see?
Let me make a clarification before I answer that. Classical music is contemporary music. It is we live in by far the most prolific era of classical music composition and performance. Even though it is a very small amount of the music currently being consumed, if you compare it to the amount of people that have historically had access to live music, classical music is actually better and stronger and more alive now than at any other point in its history. I do understand the sense of the question, though, which is how does it influence, or does it influence at all, other styles of music that are not directly related to it? Yeah, and the reality is that this is a very complex question. So let's put things in perspective a little bit. Classical music started out as a European tradition. And so the fact that in other cultures, and even in the United States, it is the thing that is most associated with professional instruction does have a sort of colonial undertone this is the music, the sort of best music, or the most advanced music. Which is absolutely untrue, and I'm happy to fight any classical musician that claims otherwise. It is one tradition that I think is wonderful and unique and should be preserved at all costs, but this inherent belief that it's somehow better or more adequate to teach than other music styles is not correct, and I think that comes from a sort of Eurocentric view of the world. That being said, one aspect of classical music is that it is very well organized music, so to say. It is written down. It does not tend to contain as much improvisation as other styles. It has a long tradition of being very formalized. And because of that, it does provide an analytical lens through which you could analyze other music as well. I'm just worried about the situation where we try to apply conventions of classical music to other styles. This is where it really starts to break down. So to clarify, classical music is not the only formalized and highly structured form of music around. It's one of many, but it is a type of music that tends to be written down and analyzed a lot, and therefore it might offer a sort of lens that could be useful for other people to apply to traditions that are unrelated to it, and to adapt to traditions that are unrelated to it. So I think we live in a pivotal moment where there is a sort of clash of understandings between those people that have gone through the traditional school system and kind of feel like classical music is the way that music should be looked at, and the rest of humanity who couldn't care less about what they perceive to be this sort of elitist and highbrow art style. I don't think that either one is correct. To be fair, I've basically created caricatures of two extreme views, right? And I think that it's really important to be aware of these dynamics. So yeah, sorry for my answer being a little bit different than perhaps the question that you asked, but I think this is the accurate way to look at it.
Hey there, this is Jonathan Pushkar, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music. Check out my recent episode where we talk about defining success in the entertainment industry, about the modern record deal, and maybe we'll talk a little Lego too.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products, it's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams, with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Let's jump ahead and talk about Tonebase, because the design of this company really is to help aspiring musicians out there, people who want to take up the instrument and learn something. And one of the things I read was that the cost of going to some of these the finer music schools, whether it be Juilliard or Berkeley, can really be cost prohibitive to the average person, especially if they don't have a scholarship to help supplement it or financially well-off parents to pay for it. So let's talk about how Tonebase got started and why.
So the 3 co-founders, as far as I understand it, were colleagues at Yale, and this was all in the before time. So I'm speaking now about stories that I have not lived myself. This is my best understanding of it. It actually started out as a class project, as a sort of entrepreneurship class project. 2 of them are guitarists themselves, and I think it started out as a Facebook group, if I'm not mistaken, that eventually became a website once they teamed up with the 3rd co-founder, who is technical in his background and not a musician. And after that, the offering and the site evolved further and further. I think that the way to put it, what I can more safely say, not having been part of the story from the beginning, is that there's a famous quote by, I think, Mark Andreessen, that software is eating the world, right? And in music, a lot of things are now possible because of technology that were not possible before. And the transmission of knowledge is one of the most obvious ways in which music is both a job for some people and a ladder for others to get into the business of becoming a musician. And there needs to be a home for music education to happen on the internet, because just like everything that used to only happen offline can now also happen online, there needs to be a place for the transmission of knowledge to exist digitally in an online format. And that's what Tonebase is. It's basically the home of all the music education that we can find online. Or actually, let me say this better. That's what Tonebase tries to be. Tonebase tries to be basically the place for music to be learned online, and its offering consists of pre-recorded lessons that are, tutorials with some of the most inspiring musicians in the history of our instruments, all the way up to live streams and things that happen every week, community challenges. The really cool thing is that it's still a very small company, so if you are a member, you get to influence the content that's being produced and the live streams that are being done quite a lot more than in probably any other educational institution that you are a part of. Because of that, you actually get to influence what the offering is to a much larger degree than in probably any other music institution that you are a part of. And, being head of guitar, I run surveys every week. I talk to people. We really try to tailor the experience to the individual needs of the customers.
When we talk about this learning process, this education process, and you said it's pre-recorded tutorials along with some live streaming sessions. When someone enrolls in Tonebase, is there a certain launching point for them? Can they come in at any point of the program, or how does that work?
They can do anything in the order that they want, which is really cool. So the pre-recorded content library is basically just a bookshelf. Imagine a digital bookshelf with all of these materials. It's kind of like Netflix in a way. In fact, the company has been described as Netflix meets Masterclass. So you have a number of lessons with artists. Some of them are not available anywhere else. I mean, none of the lessons are available anywhere else, but some of the artists have never recorded any other materials that are found on the web at all. And some of the artists are actually people that have now retired, or in some cases even sadly passed away. So it's become the sort of source of historical documents that will only continue to become more valuable over time as people retire and become less available for other types of lessons. But so the content library, the pre-recorded content library, offers you thousands upon thousands. I think it's about 2,000 lessons in guitar with various people that you can watch, and they are all handpicked, really high-level artists. The live offering, there's multiple live streams every week, usually somewhere between 3 and 4. I actually started out as head of live. That was my first thing that I did with Tonebase. I basically helped create the live component. I'm not a co-founder of Tonebase, but I'm kind of a co-founder of live, I could say. So the live offering is initially my baby. It's currently run by my colleague Martin, and it basically also features guests. It's kind of like a podcast, but it's video plus audio, and you get to ask questions and get them answered as an audience member. And some of the live streams are actually also interactive, meaning that in addition to the live stream itself, there's a Zoom room in parallel where teaching occurs in a group. So there's a lot of things that happen in that live format. There's also a place for people to submit videos that they can get feedback on. These are called interactive masterclasses. And there's a community where people can ask questions and talk to each other and get feedback and get encouragement and get tips for practicing and all of that stuff. So it's basically a place for people to achieve all the things that being a part of a vibrant community of guitarists in person would, a place for them to achieve that online.
What style of music would a student expect to be able to see when they come on board and start going through the programs? I know we touched briefly on classical, but is there all styles, or is this more fundamental learning the basic skills? What could they expect in that aspect?
Tonebase is at the moment a verticalized teaching platform, meaning that it contains only very specific information to very specific things. And at the moment, the two verticals that are already launched are guitar, classical guitar, and classical piano. And the next one that is coming up this month is classical violin. So at the moment, it's exclusively classical music, and as such, not really interesting for people that are not trying to improve their skills in that area. However, the plan is to expand the verticals over time. And of course, we started out with classical music because the two of the three co-founders are classical musicians themselves. But over time, we will go into different music styles. I've actually, I myself, as a performer, which is still, how I identify in addition to my job, I myself have been quite active at the border of classical music, fused with other styles. And I have been quite interested in bringing some of those to Tonebase for people that are not exclusively interested in classical music, but those pieces of content that reference, for example, Brazilian popular music or jazz or flamenco are still explained so that somebody who is a classical guitarist finds a way into those other styles. So they are explained, so to say, from the perspective of a classical guitarist, because the platform at the moment is only geared towards classical musicians. So that will change in the future. I couldn't tell you when, but it will definitely, you'll definitely see more verticals in the future.
If you had your choice of playing any style of music yourself, what's your favorite musical journey to go down with your instrument?
I mean, I do have that freedom. I don't consider myself constrained by anybody or anything at the moment. So here's what I've been exploring lately, because I am actually going in a brand new direction as we speak. Recently, I started becoming obsessed with the idea that the way that we consume music in Western society is actually quite different from the way that it is consumed in other societies and also in most of human history. And, I taught ethnomusicology as part of my doctorate at USC Thornton here in Los Angeles, where I actually just graduated with my doctorate last week. I got my degree.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And what I learned through my study of ethnomusicology, which is basically how music is consumed around the world, is that music most likely started out as a group activity in the same way that dance did. And for the majority of human history, we did not have this strict separation between performers and listeners. And in the Western world, people have specialized, and we've created this special class of persons that are musicians. And these are people that have worked very hard to increase their skills and to become better at their performance of music. And because of this, there is now a very clear sort of caste system where you have musicians on one side and everybody else, people who listen to music, on the other side. And these roles are almost never changed. And as children, we do have opportunities for music making in a group, in kindergarten, drum circles, all kinds of things. But as adults, we really don't. There are a couple of exceptions, like, for example, how people sing happy birthday to each other, and it's not a single performer singing it to everybody else. It's really the group that does the work. This is really, I think, a healthier and a more more natural way for music to be consumed. And so I've been obsessed with the idea of bringing music back to its roots as a participatory activity. And so to solve that problem in our Western society where this is non-standard, I've decided to write a bunch of music of my own that is designed with audience participation in mind. And this is, by the way, pretty much the opposite of the traditional classical experience, where the reality is that the concert experience is just very tense in the classical world. You're not even supposed to cough. People look at you if you cough. So it's pretty much exactly the opposite of that. And so what I created is actually, it was actually also my debut as a composer. I wrote an hour-long concert for guitar, live electronics, and audience interaction. The way that I designed this, basically, is that the music consists of various prompts that the audience has the option of joining in on. And my live performance serves to augment the quality of the music being performed, but it does not try to be the art that is consumed passively by the people. It's not trying to be the center of attention. I lead it just because I have the skills to create a better concert by leading it, but I'm sort of looking at it not as a way to showcase my skills as a musician, but rather to create sort of the most involved and participatory experience for the audience. And for this format, I've actually developed a number of tools. Some of them are technological tools, and other things are just certain ways to create the music itself that allow the quality of the music to be good. Because honestly, in my experience, if you just give people an instrument and you tell them to just do something, usually the result will be quite terrible. And you can see this in the quite unfortunate practice of public drum circles, that they're not very fun to listen to from the outside, especially. And so I've developed this system that allows me to basically create reference track that contains the prompts that the people are listening to and encourages them to take part in it, whether it be by clapping or stomping or singing, humming, doing rhythmic speaking, all kinds of activity. There's some movement, all kinds of activities that they would normally not do during a concert. And I am so excited about the response that I've received from the first concert that I decided to turn the interviews that I did with audience members into a documentary that can be watched on my website, where you can watch not only the entire hour-long concert, but also people's reactions to it. And you can see how even, within the 1 hour of the event, you can really see a paradigm shift in the way that people think, from the beginning, the way that they felt awkward and didn't know what to do, until the end when the entire thing basically became a party. I designed the last piece, for example, to turn rhythmic applause into real applause at the end, and it really worked. You can see it, transform from one thing into another. So I think that this has so much potential outside of my own work as an artist, because I have 26 years of experience playing classical guitar. I know that I can play guitar, but I think that this format is something that can be used by other people in every genre in the world. It can basically be to classical concert, not the classical music. It can be to the traditional passive concert going experience what computer games are to watching TV. Basically an interactive way of engaging with an otherwise passive medium. So I've been exploring these things quite heavily recently, and I think that the result, what I've created, my own music, is definitely not classical music. It's also not popular music. It's just something kind of its own. And I'm really excited to see where this goes in the future. I will apply my classical music training and technique in order to make the best possible live performance out of it. But ultimately what I want to do is kind of revolutionize the way that people engage with music in the first place, and sort of get this misconception out of people's minds that there is a special class of people that are musicians and everybody else should be embarrassed and ashamed to make music. So it has a bit of an educational aspect to it as well, but it's mostly just a really fun time with people together, in the same way that you could go to, let's say, a workout group like a Zumba or Soul Cycle class, go to a music event where you get to help create the music as part of as an audience member, basically.
Is this something you're going to be taking on the road?
Yes, yeah. So currently I'm working with a number of agents to try to book some concerts on it. There's a possibility that I will be playing in some colleges next year, and we're working hard to clear a couple of other venues. I do have actually, for those people that live in Los Angeles, where I am, I have a mailing list and the number of events happening here that are in the works. The next one will probably be on September 18th. But there's a mailing list for those that are in Los Angeles if you want to go check it out. And for other cities, I am planning to organize a tour at the end of this year. Don't have exact dates though.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? This is Vinny Potestivo, and check out my episode of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhanced Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhanced Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
Since 1963, Korg has been creating new experiences in music and performance. That is what drove the creation of some of Korg's most legendary products, such as the Poly 6, the M1, the Electribe, the Triton, the Minilog, the Kronos, Wave State, Op 6, and most recently the Nautilus, which is what we have here in our studio. Korg is dedicated to creating new, innovative, and uncompromising instruments which maintain the highest quality to inspire music makers, past, present, and future. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products and start creating new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
talk here online. I notice you have some guitar cases behind you. If you don't mind me asking, what type of guitars are you performing with these days?
Great question. So my main instrument is a nylon string classical guitar by guitar maker Paco Marin. He is a member of the, so to say, traditional guitar making school from Spain. His office, his workshop is in Granada in Andalusia in southern Spain. And I've actually won this one in a competition in 2010. I have not paid for a classical guitar since the age of 15 because I kept winning them in competitions instead. And it's a beautiful instrument. It's obviously handmade. And Paco Santiago Marin, the guitar maker, runs a family business. So, you know, he's quite elderly at this point. It's likely that his sons and other family members will take over from him completely soon. They're already doing a lot of work on their own. But it's a beautiful instrument, traditional style, nylon string guitar. And I'm really, really happy with it. The other one that you see behind me is actually just a toy guitar. That's just what I use sometimes for teaching or jamming. It's a very cheap instrument that my wife actually received as a present from one of her students. But then additionally, there is another one that you can't see right now, which is an amplified classical nylon string. And that's what I use in my concert. So if you go to my website, which is just myname.com, mirceagogoncea.com, you'll be able to see excerpts from my interactive concerts where I'm holding that other guitar, the amplified nylon string guitar. That's actually, this is something that's also really funny to me that, you know, I've been playing guitar since the age of 4. I'm 30 now, so 26 years. And until earlier this year, I have never been able to stand while playing the guitar because our instruments don't have the strap that you know that would allow you to stand. Some people go as far as to, you know, drill a hole in their instrument and they create a standable instrument, so to say. But I've always been worried about the value of the instrument itself. You know, these are very expensive instruments, so I've never done it until I needed to for the interactive concert. You know, for this series, I needed to be able to move around the stage, to engage people, to clap in their face, to show them what to do. So I really needed that flexibility of being able to stand. And it's actually quite incredible that as a classical musician, as a classical guitarist at least, we just don't get this chance to stand. And I think that a lot of us can actually get a lot of health benefits from not sitting all the time for hours and hours as we practice every day. So I do have a relatively cheaper amplified nylon string guitar that I'm using in my interactive concerts in order to stand and be able to engage the audience more.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was great. How can people find you?
My website is just myname.com, Mircea Gogoncea, Mirceagogoncea. But if you look me up, you know, the website is going to be the first thing that pops up. And you can find the mailing list for interactive shows. You can find videos, music. My album came out last month, and it's been on all the streaming services since last week. It's called Prism, and you can find it under music. Prism, not prison, by the way. And you can find it under the music section on my website. Yeah, that's probably the best way to reach me. You can also book me for concerts or lessons on my website directly. And if you prefer, of course, you can find me on all the social media platforms of choice, except TikTok. I don't have a TikTok, but I have an Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you know, all the standard ones.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.